in a small, poor village nestled between towering mountains, there lived a young and beautiful girl in black maxi with long hairs named Ilara. Her family was struggling to make ends meet. They lived in a humble, crumbling cottage, and her parents worked day and night in the fields, yet still found it hard to fill their bellies. Den tears. Bekalara, though, had a secret. Whenever she cried, her tears transformed into small, glittering balls of gold. At first, she thought it was some sort of strange miracle, but as time passed, the goal more frequent, and she realized that she had an extraordinary gift. One day, while working in the fields, Ilara's tearful sadness turned into a tiny golden orb that fell onto the ground. Her mother, who had been struggling to grow enough crops to sell in the market, saw the gold and was stunned. Ilara tried to hide her tears, but it was too late. Her family, seeing the gold, became greedy and desperate. From that day on, her family made her cry all day, tormenting her with endless requests for more gold. They threatened her, coaxed her, and manipulated her into crying more, all the while dreaming of their new life as billionaires. But Ilara's heart grew heavier with each passing day. She no longer wept out of sorrow or sadness, she wept out of fear, her emotions twisted by her family's unrelenting demands. Word soon spread throughout the village about Ilara's magical ability, and villagers, hungry for riches, began to come from near and far, hoping to see the golden tears for themselves. The whispers grew louder, and some villagers even talked of kidnapping her to make her cry for them so they could become wealthy too. One dark night, when the pressure became too much to bear, Ilara ran away from her home. She fled into the dense, unfamiliar jungle, hoping to escape the relentless demands of her family and the villagers. But the jungle was vast and unkind, and soon she found herself lost in its deep, dark heart. As night fell, Ilara stumbled and tripped, her heart heavy with despair. She fell into a dark cave, deep and cold, where no light reached. It was there, alone and frightened, that her tears began to fall again, sparkling in the darkness like little golden stars. For hours, she cried in the solitude of the cave, her golden tears shimmering on the rocky floor. The cave seemed to glow faintly, bathed in the light of her tears, but it only deepened her loneliness. Ilara couldn't understand what was happening to her. Why was her gift turning into a curse? The next morning, as dawn's first light filtered through the trees, a prince from a nearby kingdom, Prince Cullen, came to the jungle with his soldiers and slaves, out hunting. The prince was known for his bravery and had heard rumors of strange happenings in the forest. His curiosity led him deep into the wilderness, where, as he passed by the cave, he heard faint cries. "Who is there?" the prince called, his voice echoing in the cave. Elara, exhausted and weak, looked up to see a figure standing at the entrance of the cave. His presence brought a strange sense of hope, and despite her injuries, she managed to speak. I am Ilara," she whispered, "and I weep, for I have no control over my tears. They turn into gold, and I am cursed." The prince, taken aback, approached cautiously. "Gold tears, tell me more." Ilara recounted her story, how her family had become consumed with greed, forcing her to cry day and night for the gold, and how the villagers had tried to kidnap her. She told him of her escape into the jungle, and how she had been trapped in the cave, her heart heavy with sorrow, moved by her tale. Prince Cullen was determined to help her. He extended his hand. "Come with me, Ilara. I will take you to safety." Ilara hesitated, but the warmth in his voice soothed her, and she took his hand, allowing him to pull her from the cave and into the sunlight. The prince took her back to his kingdom, where he sheltered her in the royal palace, away from the greedy hands of the villagers and her demanding family. But word spread quickly, and her family came to the palace, begging for Ilara to return so they could claim her magical tears for themselves. The villagers, too, came with similar demands. They attempted to force their way into the palace, but the prince's guards held them off. In the chaos, Ilara was injured, her heart broken by the cruelty of those she once loved. It was then that Prince Cullen realized the depth of her pain, and it was in that moment that Ilara found her own strength. She turned to the prince, her eyes filled with a quiet resolve. "Prince Cullen," she said softly, "I am no longer just a vessel for gold. I want to live for myself, free from the greed of others. Will you stand by me?" Moved by her words, the prince knelt before her and offered his heart. "Ilara, you do not need to cry for anyone but yourself. I will stand by you, and together, we will find happiness. Will you marry me and be my queen?" Tears welled up in Ilara's eyes again, but these were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of joy, for she had found someone who truly cared for her well-being. With a smile, she accepted his proposal. The prince and Ilara were married, and they lived together in the royal palace, far away from the greed of the village. Ilara's golden tears no longer held power over her life, for she had learned to control them and let go of the past. They lived happily ever after, their hearts shining brighter than any treasure, and Ilara, no longer a girl burdened by gold, found peace in her new life, knowing that love and freedom were far more precious than any wealth the world could offer. Greed can turn a gift into a curse, but true happiness comes from love, freedom, and self-worth. Ilara's golden tears, meant to be a blessing, became a source of suffering when others sought to exploit her. Her family and the villagers allowed their greed to blind them, caring more for wealth than for her well-being. In the end, Ilara found peace and happiness, not through riches but through self-respect and the love of someone who valued her for who she was, not for what she could provide. This teaches us that material wealth is meaningless without love, kindness, and personal freedom.